Hey, greetings, welcome back everyone. It's Gleekon here with another episode of Lore of Warcraft. On our last episode, we played through the second region of Terrestrial Glades as our undead warlock, and another one bites the dust. That one was actually depressing for me, more so than many of them, because things were going well. I beat all the quests and everything in most of Terrestrial Glades. It's looking solid to beat the entire Terrestrial Glades without even a sweat. I just randomly attempted to fight an elite in the middle of it. It was fine. I didn't double get the elite. It was 3 levels higher than me when I fought it, and the kiss of death it had a constant silence effect, which it spelled doom for me. There was no amount of potions or anything I could chug. I couldn't run. It was very fast. So me fighting that elite killed me. Just a bad choice on my part, led to my death. I did kill some other elites on the episode, and like I said, no other problems with any of the quests or anything. So I just, and I chose to fight the elite. It's not like it just suddenly aggroed onto me. I saw it, I thought it was cool. I actually did aggro onto it by accident, but I ran, isolated it from its friends, decided to fight it, failed. So we only have a couple that have one alliance, one horde that have survived. We've also been reading through the Dungeons and Dragons World of Warcraft campaign setting. This source book called Lands of Mystery from the perspective of Brand's Bronzebeard. The first 5 chapters, the first half of the book has been all about the lands of mystery. And stay a while and listen as we move on to chapter 6 and the second half of the book. Now, this starts to get us out of the realm of pure reading and a lot more stats. The sections are a little longer, and we're just going to kind of play it by ear here and how we cover it. So to preface the chapter, there's one sentence. It says, Kalimdor, the South Seas, and Northrend boast many strange and interesting civilizations. Compiled here is what I know about 4 of them: the Blue Dragonflight, the Magnetar, Murlocs, and Nerubians. Now, that sets us up to be like, hey, this is all from the perspective of Brand Bronzebeard. But as you read here, and we skim, his voice is kind of absent. This is neutral. But let's just kind of kick off with the Blue Dragonflight and see how it goes. The Blue Dragonflight encompasses both the literal descendants of Malygos, the Blue Dragons, and their loyal servants and companions, the Blue Dragon's spawn. For the thousands of years between the sundering and the destruction of the demon soul, blue dragons were all but unheard of, but they have begun to emerge in the world once again. Blue dragons are the undisputed masters of magic, and most of their lives revolve around the working of spells. They focus on the acquisition of knowledge and greater magical power to the exclusion of almost everything else, but this is not to say they are single-minded. Rather, the dragons are extremely loyal and know that the Titans gave their master his domain so that they would use their magic to keep the world safe. As such, the proper use of magic is a matter of great importance to the dragons. While blue dragons are naturally curious about the use of warlock magic and the like, they consider such forms of magic to be perversions of nature. For this reason, warlocks and necromancers are considered enemies of the dragonflight, although the dragons have higher priorities on their list, namely every living black dragon. In their pursuit of magic, blue dragons infiltrate mortal societies in humanoid forms to learn more about how mortals practice spellcasting. While some dragons have engaged in this activity for centuries, it has been widespread only since Malygos' recent recovery from years of insanity. While the dragons are primarily interested in arcane magic, other forms interest them as well, especially those that do not require the worship of a divine being. For this reason, I suspect a number of blue dragons engage in a scholarly study of the holy light. I wouldn't be surprised to find blue dragons in the ranks of many mortal orders, the Kirin Tor, naturally, but also orders dedicated to the light such as the Argent Dawn and the Knights of the Silver Hand. While magic is strongly associated with the Blue Dragonflight, they are also the masters of frost and find all forms of ice and water welcome. Most blue dragons make their lairs in the frozen peaks of mountains or in caverns near or under freezing water. The traditional home of the Blue Dragonflight is Northrend, but more and more dragons migrate to the caverns of Mazoril in winter spring on Kalimdor. This migration occurs for 2 main reasons. First, because of the growing concern about another imminent attack on the World Tree, and second to retreat from the scourge, which some dragons see as a threat the dragonflight is not prepared to conquer. Blue dragons spawn are the descendants of mortals who associated with blue dragons so closely that their families gradually transformed into part humanoid, part dragon crossbreeds. Excuse me. They take many roles in the Blue Dragonflight, serving as foot soldiers, emissaries to the humanoid races, and companions. While the dragons respect them, they are essentially a slave race and are trained from birth to give their lives to protect dragons. Most dragon spawn are intelligent and loyal enough to sacrifice themselves without any such training, however. Many dragon spawn are raised and tutored by a dragon in addition to their dragon spawn parents, and they often wear the symbol of this mentor for the rest of their lives. While dragon spawn exist for all the major dragonflights, an unusually large number of blue dragon spawn progress beyond the level of simply serving as grunt soldiers of the blue dragonflight. The unusual intelligence and disposition toward magic associated with the blue dragonflight is true of the dragon spawn as well, and this makes them more likely to follow in the footsteps of their mentors and become arcanists. Magical aptitude is rare among the dragon spawn, however. It is simply less so among the blues. Now this makes me think about what's the difference between the dragon spawn and the Drakthir? Description. Blue dragons are slim and regal, and the glow of intelligence shines brightly in their eyes. Historically, dragons have had a reputation for spending their days in solitary contemplation of the secrets of the world, but in recent times, blue dragons have proved to be more social due to the growing threats to all living creatures. In addition to their noted obsession with magic, blue dragons also enjoy researching other subjects. They could be called the academics among dragons. They've begun to serve more and more as the teachers of younger members of other species. While in humanoid form, many dragons also take notice of scientific discoveries of other races and take an increasing interest in the development of engineering and similar studies. Blue dragons are also highly territorial, largely due to their paranoia that any intruder wandering into their lairs are probably agents of the black dragonflight. Previous years, blue dragons even attacked each other over territorial disputes, but such conflicts are unlikely now that so many dragons have adapted to living in groups for protection. Blue dragons spawn have the same interests and lifestyles as their blue dragon mentors, but they tend to work in groups, oftentimes with a military function. These dragon spawn are almost never found far from at least one dragon of their flight. Appearance. Blue dragons are no smaller than the average dragon, but they tend to be thin and sinuous in form. Most blues have scales the color of ice, but some have scales that resemble the sky or a type of gem. Some dragons are named or nicknamed after a gemstone type that their skin resembles, like azure ghosts. Many dragons also mark their scales with eldritch runes, which serve the same function as tattoos do for humanoids, as well as potentially having magical effects. Male and female blue dragons are nearly indistinguishable to most humanoids, but some ancient texts and my associations with dragons makes me believe that males tend to have straighter and thicker horns, while the female's horns tend to look more rounded. Blue dragon spawn resemble blue dragons from the waist down, but their upper bodies are those of scaled humanoids. Their arms and torsos resemble those of a human, with only slight claws in most cases, but their heads are more closely resemble their draconic allies. Blue dragon spawn scales are similar in color to those of the blue dragons, and they typically wear armor with colors to match their dragonflight as well. Regions. The blue dragonflight has a major presence in two regions. These two places are the Nexus in Koldara on Northrend, and Mazathril in Winterspring in northern Kalimdor. In both cases, the dragons inhabit massive tunnel systems where they study magic and prepare for battle against the black dragonflight, the scourge, and other dangers. Faith. The blue dragonflight's belief system is scientific. They seek proof of everything and take little on faith or word of mouth alone. The dragons revere Malygos as a creator of magic, but not as a god. Rather, they feel Malygos is simply the greatest scientific mind that has ever existed. Those dragons that know of the Titans respect them as powerful users of magic and as creators, but they consider the Titans good examples and mentors, not divinities to be worshipped. Likewise, the dragons respect the followers of Elune, Cenarius, and the other ancients, but they do not worship these entities. History. In the early days of the world, 5 dragons were granted great power by the Titans in order to safeguard the world from dark forces. These 5 dragons are known as the Dragon Aspects, and Malygos is one. Magic is Malygos' domain, and for thousands of years his children prospered and experimented with the eldritch powers of the universe. unrivaled in their mastery of arcane power. When the Night Elves inadvertently called the Burning Legion to the world, the Blue Dragons were among the first to realize the potential threat. And when the aspect of the Earth, Neltharion, suggested creating a magical artifact to aid in the destruction of the demons, the Blues were some of the first to agree to the plan. Malygos himself was one of Neltharion's closest friends, and he gave much of his own essence toward the creation of this object called the Dragon Soul. When each dragon had contributed a portion of his or her essence to the artifact, Neltharion deemed it complete and brought it to bear against the demons, but only for a precious few moments. Soon he turned the artifact against the terrified Night Elves as well, and finally his own brethren. The shocked dragons were helpless to resist the power of the Dragon Soul, for it contained a fraction of the essence of each with the exception of Neltharion himself. All the Dragonflights save Neltharion's own were paralyzed in the air until the timely intervention of Corielstrasz, one of the mates of the Red Dragon Queen, who had been absent from the initial use of the artifact. While Corielstrasz was no match for the might of the aspect of Earth, he was powerful enough to interrupt Neltharion's concentration for a moment, which freed the other dragons from their paralysis and allowed them to act. Malygos, infuriated at the betrayal by one of his closest companions, struck first, and at a great price. As the Blue Dragonflight attacked Neltharion, the mighty Black Worm unleashed the full fury of the Dragon Soul against them, and the power instantly slew nearly every one of them. Malygos narrowly managed to raise a protective spell fast enough to survive, and only a handful of others reached the safety of his barrier in time. As the other dragons turned to act, Neltharion retreated, leaving the Blue Dragonflight broken in his wake. The loss of most of his children and mates drove Malygos out of his mind. Malygos continued for some time in the war against Neltharion, who now called himself Deathwing, but Malygos' presence in the world diminished more and more over time. Perhaps Malygos' last sane act was aiding in the creation of the World Tree over the Second Well of Eternity, and placing many of his surviving dragons nearby in the caves of Maztharil to hold eternal vigil over the sacred site. For thousands of years, none but a few of the most ancient dragons knew of Malygos' whereabouts, and much of his dragonflight hid in solitude, realizing their fight against Deathwing was doomed without their leader. In the events leading up to the Second War, Deathwing led a powerful orc warlock named Necros to the Dragon Soul, now renamed the Demon Soul, and instructed him how to use it. Necros used the Demon Soul to force the Red Dragon aspect Alexstrasza into submission, and force the rest of the Red Dragonflight to serve him or risk the death of their queen. Corielstrasz, who escaped by faking his death and taking the identity of an Archmage of the Kirin Tor, sought the other aspects for help. Though each aspect was difficult to convince, he eventually succeeded, and the dragons battled Deathwing in the sky near Grim Batal. We read that book, Day of the Dragon. Corielstraz's human appearance, Ronan, apprentice Ronan, defeated Necros and used one of Deathwing's scales to destroy the Demon Soul. The destruction of the artifact released the ancient power that had been sealed inside for millennia and allowed the aspects to defeat Deathwing and force him to retreat. A couple decades have passed since the defeat of Deathwing at Grim Batal. In the aftermath, Malygos finally recovered from his 10,000 years of insanity. With his recovery, his children found new hope and renewed their efforts to learn the mysteries of the world and protect its people. Since the Blue Dragonflight was so long secluded from the affairs of mortals, most are pleasantly surprised at the progress humans and High Elves have made in the mastery of arcane magic. Their pride in the accomplishments of these races allows them to justify taking humanoid form to trade secrets with the mortals. Since Deathwing's disappearance, the Black Dragonflight is less organized, and this chaos allows the Blues the chance to strike back against the murderous dragons who hunted them for millennia. General Kolbatan, one of the eldest and most powerful of the Blue Dragon spawn, has organized an army to protect all creatures against the threat of the Black Dragonflight, and if he has his way, his army will grow strong enough to obliterate the Black Dragonflight. Society. Blue dragons were once solitary creatures, and thus their society does not have a rigid hierarchy. All blue dragons serve Malygos with roughly equal standing, although there are some ancient dragons who are considered authority figures due simply to their great knowledge and mastery of magic. In essence, it is a society ruled by the powerful, but in a group of intellectuals such as these, any real ranking system would do nothing but cause endless debate. Males and females have equal standing in Blue Dragon society, although usually it is the female who chooses her mate, not the other way around. With a few exceptions, blue dragons usually take only a single mate, and they are immensely protective of their mates and children. Female blue dragons sometimes stalk and observe a potential mate in a number of different forms to gauge the male's worth before revealing themselves. Blue dragon spawn communities are male-dominated, not because of any difference in power or physical strength, but rather due to the amount of time females spend dealing with the young. While blue dragon spawn value their children as much as any race, they are so focused on military objectives and the achievement of greater power and knowledge that they often neglect their young more than most races. This is especially true of the males. Unlike blue dragons, dragon spawn have a set ranking system. Blue dragon spawn ranks include in ascending order Azure Wing, Cold Talon, Shiver Scale, Ice Blade, Mage Fury, Winter Fury, Arctic Magus, and Ice Tempest. The highest ranks are available only to those individuals who exhibit arcane mastery. Most blue dragons focus on advancing in spellcasting ability, and thus the overwhelming majority of them favor the Arcanist class. Many dragon spawn are warriors, rogues, hunters, scouts, or other combat-oriented classes. The gladiator prestige class is popular among melee-oriented dragon spawn. Several blue dragons have joined the Kirin Tour and become archmages, and a handful of paladins also exist in their numbers. A few dragon spawn priests worship the Blue Dragonflight or Malygos, contrary to most blue dragon beliefs, but shamans and druids are almost unheard of among the Blue Dragonflight. Blue dragons and corruption. Blue dragons are some of the foremost arcane spellcasters on Azeroth. As such, some are concerned that the demon's taint may touch and corrupt the Dragonflight. These concerns are unfounded. Blue dragons, blue wormkin, and the rest of the Dragonflight are immune to arcane corruption, though no one yet understands why. Perhaps they have mastered magic to such an extent that they surpass the danger. If this is true, perhaps arcanists of other races can achieve similar transcendence. Mentality. The Blue Dragonflight is focused on the pursuit of ever greater power and knowledge. This doesn't make them completely egocentric. The dragons share what they learn to help others of their kind as well as the world in general. Many blue dragons strive to impress their master Malygos with their knowledge of magic or invent new spells or magic items. Members of the Blue Dragonflight value other thinkers, including spellcasters, engineers, writers, artists, and general academic types. If a mortal shows a blue dragon a spell he has never seen, she earns that dragon's respect. If she teaches the dragon that spell, she likely gains the dragon's gratitude for a lifetime, and blues live a very long time. Generally, members of the Blue Dragonflight consider adventurers in general to be kindred spirits, but they highly favor those that are clever, inventive, and powerful. Relations. While blue dragons are slowly growing in numbers again, they lack the power to take on the children of Deathwing, such as Onyxia and Nefarium, directly. As such, the blues entrust favored mortals with the task of fighting against these powerful black dragons, and reward their mortal allies with magical secrets and objects of power in return for risking their lives to aid the Dragonflight. Generally, the Blue Dragonflight likes the mortal races, especially those that practice arcane magic, but there are a few exceptions. Most blue dragons dislike goblins, since many goblins serve the Black Dragonflight, and it was a group of goblins that outfitted Deathwing with the adamantine armor attached to his scales. Also, blue dragons are wary of orcs due to their role in enslaving the Red Dragonflight in recent years. Relations between the Blue Dragonflight and the other Dragonflights have dramatically improved since the fall of Deathwing at Grim Batal. Many of the other dragons felt that the Blues abandoned them after the construction of the World Tree, but now Red, Bronze, and Blue dragons guard Nordrassil and together once again. Distinguishing characteristics. Two major features of blue dragon lairs stand out considerably. First, blue dragons sculpt much of their lairs from solid ice, using magic as well as their claws to form intricate caverns of frost. The ice they extract is often hardened with magic into objects of art or defensive structures such as columns, statues, or barricades of enchanted ice. Their artwork and architecture both favor sharp features, for example stalactites and stalagmites, and their lairs are intentionally reformed to be shaped like claws or fangs, and their artwork tends to have a similar edge to it. Second, blue dragons are well known for their use of unusual arcane runes for a variety of different purposes. As already noted earlier, they use runes like tattoos on their bodies, and a dragon often marks her lair with matching runes to let her friends and allies know who lives there. These runes also can be tied to powerful magic. For example, in Maztharil, I was able to use a blue dragon skill given to me at Mount Hyjal to activate a circle of runes that functioned as a portal. Rumors speak of a few blue dragonflight rune masters. These must be impressive sights. Yeah, that sounds cool. Blue dragons also use runes as a form of code or language. I noticed a number of tablets of glacial ice marked with these unusual runes. They must have served to keep records. In other words, the ice blocks are probably glorified pieces of paper that only the dragons or someone else familiar with their system of runes can read. The tablets are numerous enough that I suspect they have a method of producing them as quickly as we write on a page. Since most of the creations of the dragons are more or less permanent, it is difficult to distinguish between an abandoned dragon home and one that is still in use. Dragons typically take only their personal belongings, such as stashes of extra magical items or gold, with them when they leave any given cavern. As such, there are a number of abandoned dragon caves out there somewhere just waiting to be examined, but it's rather dangerous to wander in and check which ones are empty. Alright, so now we're going to kind of skim for a pinch here, because now we're starting to get into some stats. So the leaders, of course, we have Malygos, and it says he's one of the most ancient creatures living on Azeroth, one of the handful that was alive during the Titans. And now that he's regained his sanity, he's once again taking an active role in the protection of the world. And General Kolbaton is a Scalebane mage warrior, one of the most renowned Blue Dragonflight spawn, and he's the leader of their military forces in Kalimdor, which means he probably lives in Winterspring. His goal for his army is to grow strong enough to crush the Black Dragonflight once and for all. And here is how you could play as a blue Wormkin if you wanted to make that as a race, sort of like a Dragonborn. Here we have a picture of a couple of them. Adventure hooks for the Blue Dragonflight, such as shards of the Demon Soul have been stolen, full-blown assault on Blackrock Spire. Okay, so this is just all stats on how you would play a blue Wormkin. I guess when you're young, you're a whelp. As you get up, you're a drake, or those are just some stat blocks. Yeah, the blue Wormkin level, I guess that would be your racial level. And the dragon is not overwhelmingly large, standing about 6 feet in height, but his shimmering scales and brilliant eyes hint at the great power contained within his small frame. And this is the same stat block here. If you look, I guess blue whelp, blue drake, and they just have that doubled up for whatever reason. I don't know why. Weird. Huh. Yeah, it's just a double, so it's like a typo. The blue drake, I guess, is a little different from, if you look back here, we have blue Wormkin. So blue drake is some type of stat, a creature, I guess. The massive drake emerges from the frigid waters, her ice-colored scales shimmering with hidden light. Patterns of cobalt runes line her neck and upper body, and her wings fold almost invisibly against her lithe form. So it's different, I guess, from actually playing it. Different dragon moves. They have special attacks that are unique. Crush, breath, weapon, frightful presence. That's a D&D thing. The blue Scalebane, and this is just playing as that. They are the most elite of the blue dragon spawn and represent a small fraction of dragon spawn society. While all blue Scalebane were Wormkin and Flame Tongues. So that's from the Manual of Monsters. Not sure if that's the other one we read or the revamped one we haven't read yet. They're technically a different species, having been transformed by complicated ritual, similar to those undergone by dragons as they mature. So they're the best of the best. We get some stats on how they work, and they have a community, Mazthoril, in Winterspring. The blue dragons here are primarily on watch for activity from the Black Dragonflight, although there have recently been concerns that the Blue Dragonflight will be needed to assist the dragons at Mount Hyjal if the demons in Dark Whisper Gorge attack. Since Deathwing's disappearance after the Battle of Grimmittal, the Black Dragonflight's members have been busy fighting each other for dominance. Recently, however, 2 of Deathwing's children, Onyxia and Nefarian, have taken charge over much of their dragonflight and could be a considerable threat. To this end, the Blue Dragonflight organizes an army here led by the Dragonspawn General Kolbaton to protect the world from the increasing threat of the Black Dragons. In specific, Kolbaton focuses on the protection of dragon eggs, which are being stolen by the Blacks for some evil purpose. So we know we have 3 more. We have the Magnetar, we have the Murloc, and we have whatever, Furbolg or something like that we're going to read about too. So it looks like it's front-loaded with a decent amount of backstory and lore. So it's a little longer than the typical Zone 1. And then it's backloaded. The second half is largely just stats. So our page count will jump up a little bit during this section. But hey, we got another episode in the pipe 5x5. I appreciate you so much for watching and listening. I truly do. And I look forward to seeing you next time on Lore of Warcraft.